Well, welcome! This is a different and interesting case. Now, I've been enjoying the Yakuza series along the way for a little bit now. I started this series of games back summer of 2020, and as of writing this, I've beaten number 4. Normally, a retrospective is something you would do after years of not playing it. But I'm gonna be honest, I just wanted a reason to talk about these games, and to be honest, they've mostly been a blast. And believe me, we'll get to that mostly eventually. So, considering that I started with 0, I figured that it was only right to start at this one. Now, in terms of recency, this game is still sort of up there, if you count 2015-ish recent. But, as the number implies, it is a prequel to the entire series, and, well, up to that point, they've had 5 games, so, you know, you've got a lot of groundwork to build up. Throughout this game, you'll see many main and secondary characters in the universe known and loved by longtime fans. It's mostly just build-up for how they all got to know these characters along the way. Now, I warn you, this video might be a bit longer than most, but trust me, it's worth it. I'm going through this entire thing piece by piece. Now, as for any other stuff in the review, well, this will only cover the stuff in 0. I will not be referencing any of the other games, at least at this point. That out of the way, it's time to enter the criminal world. The world of the Yakuza. Our story begins. The year is 1988, the glorious city of Kamurocho, paradise of entertainment, pleasure, and organized crime, all in the time known as the Bubble. Money rules the world, and the people with the most run it. We start with a young Kazuma Kiryu, just doing his job. He's doing grunt work of collecting a loan from some guy who needs to pay up, or else he's in deep shit. Well, because it's the Yakuza, duh. After collecting his loan and turning in his collections money to the loan shark, it's time to jam with the homie, Akira Nishikiyama. Follow Nishiki down the road, sober up some drunk men, and drink up a karaoke and some ramen till the sun comes. Unfortunately, not long after, we see on the news that the guy we shook down is now dead, in the exact place we left him, even though we just left him to a pulp. And, well, now he's got a bullet in his head. And, you know, the family's not happy with this. We're paged by our lieutenants and are ordered to come in and explain what our crazy ass was thinking. Take a taxi and meet the 3 mad lads. Daisuke Kuze, Keiji Shibusawa, and Hiroki Awano. They're pissed, and rightfully so. Not only because it looks bad for the Dojima family, because of the location. Kiryu tries to explain that it wasn't him, but he can't do it effective without evidence. Here, Kuze decides to tell us about why that place is so important. It's a place called the Empty Lot, a single little patch of land that would really be avoidable in any normal case, but anyone who gets it has an upper hand selling it for its value. And, well, it's for the revitalization project for Dojima and whatnot, you know? Don't quite remember much about it, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. But one more thing that they're doing is that the lieutenants are competing to get this for their boss, Sohei Dojima, and with it they'll instantly get promoted to captain. And, well, they need a new captain since the current one, Shintaro Kazuma, is, well, just sitting in jail. Kiryu seems disgusted and, well, he's determined to solve who set up the hit. Kuze tells him, hey, just leave your pinky and then turn yourself in, don't get involved, or else you're gonna die. Fun. Having enough tomfuckery for one day, Kiryu heads back to town and decides to visit the loan shark, gave him the original job, beats up everyone in the building, and then Kuze shows up once more. He tries to get Kiryu to snuff out Kazuma and the info only he knows about the Empty Lot. Kiryu can't do this since Kazuma is basically a father, since the days of the orphanage where he was raised. Kiryu leaves, then Nishiki tells Kiryu to head over to the Kazuma family office to talk to their confidant, Osamu Kashiwagi, captain within the family and trusted ally. Kashiwagi sort of figures things out, showing his big brain to the suspicious acts of Kuze, and, well, that the entire Dojima family is planning in order to get Kazuma out of the family, while informing the boys more about the empty lot and its overall value. Now knowing what he knows, Kiryu decides to be expelled from the family in order to take the blame for everything. That way Kazuma doesn't have to take the rap. Sins of the son, sins of the father type stuff, you know? Well, things don't go quite so well. And definitely not as planned, as when we get to Dojima's office, Kuze the dickhead says, "I'm the captain now," and wants us dead. After an intense gauntlet of goons and eventually Kuze himself, Dojima and the other captains appear. They call Kuze a bitch and let Kiryu go to live as a civilian, telling the biggest lie in the series. Oh, and Kazuma's still gonna totally take the rap for all this. Lol, so this is all for nothing. Take that, idiot. Defeated, Kiryu heads back to Kamurocho, and a mysterious man named Tachibana approaches him. He gets taken in and taken care of while explaining that if Kiryu joins him in acquiring the empty lot, he can protect Kazuma and prove Kiryu's innocence. Kiryu says that's bullshit and demands his clothes back, but Tachibana knows he'll be back to reconsider. We go tell Nishiki we aren't dead and then head back to Kiryu's apartment and talk over some beers. Nishiki tells us the loan shark is now dead and suspects Kuze might have been up to it, as well as some info about Tachibana's real estate business. Turns out they push people out, treating them like Yakuza themselves through any means necessary. Kiryu decides to investigate them himself and finds a couple of businesses who were forced out. While questioning one of them, one of Tachibana's men shows up. Jun Oda tries to push a lowly establishment owner right out of the building by bribing him with money. Kiryu seems appalled by all this, but Oda tells him that it's part of the economy. Money controls everything, and without it you can't protect anything, let alone yourself. Determined to find out more, Kiryu searches for some homeless gents who was working with Oda that day. They confirm Nishiki's statement about them being like Yakuza and forcing people out, as well as tipping off that they might be a place near somewhere called the Champion District of town. When you get there, there's some men afraid. We fight them. Then Oda shows back up, wondering who Kiryu is and what he wants. After a call to the boss, Oda tells Kiryu to head to their office. When he gets there and fights. Tachibana shows up, saying Kiryu passed Oda's little test and agrees to take him under his wing, flexing his mad power and confirming money is power. Blah blah blah. Insert funny Virgil quote. As well as that Kazuma has been a mole within the clan, helping Tachibana, hoping to unify everything, as it's in a perfect imbalance right now. Tachibana further proves his trust to Kiryu with a watch Kazuma left for him, and now the entire thing is on. So, from then Kiryu becomes a real estate man. Spends the next day with Oda as he teaches our boy the ropes of the business. After a long day's work, we go to a bar named Serena for a celebratory drink. Nishiki is there, being a regular of the place, as we wait for Oda to arrive. After some more forced karaoke, Oda walks in bloody and beaten. Behind him, a bunch of goons, and behind them is Awano. We fuck with their plans while on the job today, and now Awano is also pissed. He's kinda out for blood at this point. He knows the Tachibana's up to things to acquire the lot too, so after a fight outside, he advises Kiryu to stop getting in their business and hand Tachibana over if he doesn't want to die. Kiryu's totally prepared to take on all of them, even if it means death, with all evidence leading to him or clearing his name being erased, meaning only one thing. Well, he has no other choice but to go. Next day, Awano, Kuze, and Shibusawa don't get a call, so Awano calls up Dojima, gets the clear to murder the shit out of Kiryu, no longer considering him a civilian. And they decide to include the entire Kazuma family, since Kiryu brought Kazuma in, cause I guess, yeah, sure. That's their logic, not mine. Now Kiryu has to go through basically the entire city just to escape Dojima's boys. While running around town, a stripper helps him get into the sewers as a way to avoid everything. But to the surprise of no one, it's a trap. And Kuze shows up in the sewers on a motorcycle, hits Kiryu with the pipe at a very high velocity, surviving, and then a boss fight occurs again. After escaping Kuze fight number 2 of 1 million, we end up in a club called Deborah, with dancing Awano and all. Kiryu doesn't want to dance and calls Awano a clown, then they talk. Awano talks about the glory-filled glamour that comes with being a full-fledged Yakuza, hoping to goad and bluff Kiryu, saying that he either joins his side or dies outside. Kiryu tells Iwano to go fuck himself, then leaves to find out there's nothing. There's nobody outside. The same old Kamurocho streets. Oh, then suddenly Nishiki shows up. He helps Kiryu try to escape by taking him out of the city by car, and will hopefully keep him in the clear for a bit. Get to a random dead end in the forest, get a moment of reprieve. As the two stand and smoke, wondering where they go from here, Nishiki decides to reenact the ending of Mice and Men, telling Kiryu about the rabbits. He's hoping that killing him right now would make sure that Kiryu doesn't have to suffer and die so horribly later on. Kiryu decides to call Nishiki's bluff and call him a bitch as well, because Kiryu loves doing that. He steals his car and then drives off, living to fight another day. Our protagonist, everybody. Kiryu ends up making his way back to town, needing to lay low to get the Tojo off his ass. So he decides to head back to his apartment, only to find it being So with that, we need to find somewhere else to stay, getting as few people involved as possible. Getting hit by a drunk man on the street, encounter Reina in the park, the lady who runs Serena. She offers to let us stay, but Kiryu, being the humble man he is, doesn't want to do it. Reina decides to insist, and well, Kiryu has no choice, and he's just like, forget it, why not? Later, more Dojima's goons show up, and Kiryu just absolutely demolishes them and decides to leave before the bar itself becomes the target. Gives her a locket that means a lot to Nishiki and instructs to give it to him next time they meet. Fighting more goons, we find a big ol' army of them outside. They lie in the streets hoping to make a big ol' ambush that will finally kill Kiryu in his tracks. Well, it doesn't really work, and then Tachibana decides to step on the gas, running over Kuze, as he still lives, and anyone else in his way. We're able to escape into an underground parking garage, and Tachibana tells us how hard it is to get around Dojima's men. Kiryu then laments about how many people are getting involved. Tachibana is just like, fuck it, use everybody, who cares? But they're all pawns anyway. You're the puppet. And well, Kiryu's one of those puppets, technically. He needs them right now, for things in order to go well. Tachibana collapses from exhaustion, says there's a place no one will really find him. We end up in a hospital inside a place called Little Asia, which for us American people is basically like Chinatown all the way in New York, except a bit smaller in this place. We hear that the man who overlooks Little Asia, named Chen, wants to see and talk to us. We meet him, and then he tells us to get out because we're heavily targeted, and this guy just hates the Yakuza in general for what they've done to the entire place. Kiryu understands, and well, he goes to the hobo paradise known as West Park, after, well, we really have nowhere else to go. We get there, and then we find a guy we helped out earlier, and he offers us a place to stay for the night. Kiryu beats up some homeless hunters, and then the day after, Oda came to visit. Picks us up and takes us somewhere we're very familiar with. We end up arriving, actually, at Tojo HQ. We're inside Tachibana's negotiating Kiryu's safety, with the second acting chairman. Seems to really like Kiryu, as he reminds him of Kazuma at his age. Tachibana goads about how Dojima himself might take over if not careful, and then offers 500 million up front. An extra 500 mil when confirmed that Kiryu won't be chased down, hunted, and defeated. And a 30% cut directly to Tojo HQ. Impressed with his negotiation skills, well, it goes pretty well, but not before we get out with a fight. So, after doing sick fights and combo attacks with the boys, you see that Dojima's pissed and wants the empty lot. Still, no surprise. Now it's Shibusawa's turn to take things into his own hands. Meanwhile, at the docks, everybody rests. Kiryu wonders why Tachibana would use 1 million yen on him. Tells him it's a trade secret, and then gets filled in on the fact they have intel to owner the empty lot. Kiryu decides then and there to go to a place called Sotenbori, despite all dangers. Oda tags along too, because why not? We're heading out again. It's back to Little Asia. Tachibana tells us who we're looking for. Someone named Makoto Makimura. And it's off to Sotenbori for Kiryu and Oda. Marks up half of the story. Oh yeah. There's a lot more where that came from. Our second half takes place somewhere else. We journey all the way to Osaka in the sinister city of Sotenbori. Pan around the city and hear about this big club called the Grand. Pan around the club inside. See the local people enjoying the time of their lives with, well, literally women and wine. Good old dream. Hearing about this elusive manager of the club. He's like a legend or ghost of sorts. Then cut to a guest trying to cop a feel, which both in life and in the club is a huge no-no. Refusing to leave, one of the workers has to call the man, the myth, the legend, the manager. Now who is this manager? Goro goddamn Majima. Coming in with the greatest character introduction I've ever seen, and nobody can argue with me on that. But it's what the internet calls peak fiction. Except it means something for once in this case. Once we teach this Jagov how to be a decent human being, Majima decides to head back to his office. We help out with troubles around the club. One of them being someone ordering a bunch of expensive drinks on someone else's tab, knowing damn well they don't have to pay for it. Real class act there, buddy. Well, to Majima's surprise and disgust, this is Tsukasa Sagawa. He's basically Majima's own personal warden within a group called the Omi Alliance, as well as sworn brother to Majima's boss, Futoshi Shimano. Majima fucked up real bad, so Sagawa asked him to raise 100 million yen as the manager of this club. Then he'll have a talk to convince Shimano to let him back in the clan. When Sagawa comes to visit, he raises the amount by 5 mil. Majima has clear contempt for this man, but he can't do a thing about it, as he knows it will hurt his chances to escape the hell of a civilian. It'll only really blunder his chances to go back into a full-fledged Yakuza. Sagawa leaves, we do some more club business with another club, then head home. We reach Majima's apartment, then we see a vision of an event from 3 years ago. This will come back later in the series where it becomes more prevalent, specifically number 4, but basically there was a raid with Majima and his Kyodai, Taiga Saejima. He didn't make it because reasons to, we will also get to in 4. Trust me, it's more integral there. And Shimano puts Majima in a place called the Hole. Well, Majima basically cheats death after a whole year of torture is given to Sagawa. He wakes up for another day in what he calls his own personal prison. Spend the day at the club and then get a call from Sagawa who just wants some drinks to talk, you know? Majima's very hesitant to do so, but agrees anyway. He has no other choice, really. Get there, and then one of the most intense scenes I've seen since the entirety of Whiplash itself. Sagawa pours up a drink, decides to pick Majima's brain for a bit. Wonder why he's so eager to get back in the Yakuza. Topic then leads to the flashback we saw earlier. Majima sees it as a way for atonement for what he did. Seeing an opportunity, Sagawa decides to offer Majima a deal. Gives him a hit, almost guaranteeing him a spot back. Looking for and killing a person named Makoto Makamura is the goal. Majima agrees in a heartbeat and heads home. Next day, the search is on for info. We hear this person frequents telephone clubs, so we go there, go out with a girl who has info, and leads us to the massage parlor they work at. When we get there, the entire building's empty. No one in sight. Then some random girl walks in, wondering if anyone's around. She's blind, so she doesn't even know that Majima's there. Bumping into him, she thinks he's a thief. Calm the lady down, he calls himself a customer, knowing she'll be none the wiser. Using this, we get info on her boss. Really helps us out, saves a few steps. The boss comes back and finds us, immediately sensing the hostile nature. Sends the girl out, and then a fight ensues. After the fight, some men come in looking for Makoto. It's revealed here that Makoto is not the boss, and Makoto is actually the blind girl. The big guy's name is Wenhai Lee. Seeing as she returns, the thuggish men decide to kidnap her, and Lee sends us out to save Makoto. After a escort mission, Makoto is safe for now and very scared. While she clings to her leg, Majima contemplates finishing the job here and there as he looks right into his knife. The next time we see him, we're in an abandoned warehouse, having Makoto stay there to be safe and never leave. Thanks to a rival club, we're able to use this place for as long as we need to. Now it's time to go find Lee. We decided the best place to look is go to the massage parlor. And, well, we find a poor-looking man there. Came to grab some clothes for Lee. He's currently under his care. Tells us he'll be at a place called Jambalaya, and head there if we want any info. So, go there and find Lee playing Mahjong, all bandaged up. He doesn't trust us completely, but we need him to trust us, because Makoto won't trust us for nothing, and so in order to get Makoto's trust, we need Lee, but in order to gain Lee's trust, we need to know that we can protect it's all complicated bullshit. So, after a test of having a bunch of Chinese friends of his fight us, Lee decides to trust us after all and tells us that Makoto's blind because of some trauma she suffered. The last thing she saw was a man with a bat tattoo on his arm. Really gave her hell for years when she first came to the country. Majima heads back to Makoto and decides to get her some nice hot Osaka takoyaki. Delicious delicacy. Get back and have a heart-to-heart with her about her blindness and Majima's own, well, one-eyed blindness. But no time to develop because it's time for work, and promise that we'll have Lee over when he can. Back at the Grand, we hear about a guest ordering drinks on our tab. Well, lo and behold, it's the doctor from the massage place earlier. Tells us that Lee's waiting for us to meet and that he'll follow us to our apartment to inform us about what to do next. Outside, we find the thugs from earlier who kidnapped Makoto, beat them up, then Sagawa shows up, asking why we didn't call. We feed him some excuse, and he totally buys it. We head back to our apartment with Lee, and he has a bag in his hand. He decides to tell us to use a back door to his parlor, so that way we can avoid Sagawa's constant surveillance of the area. We're able to avoid the jobbers and head back to the warehouse, where we see Makoto looking through some photos. She doesn't seem to know what they're about, it seems. Lee comes back with some drinks for everyone, and the one Makoto has is drugged with some NyQuil or some shit. With her asleep, it's time to discuss the true plan. Basically, there's a girl who's a horrible hussy, and it'd be totally cool if she died. So Lee decides to use her as Makoto's body double and dump her in the river with a battered face, so no one would know it was really her. Majima thinks that's a stupid idea and leaves with the bag to get rid of it. Totally thinking it's a good idea to just leave it in a public trash can. Totally not pinning anything on you. As we see a mystery man in the shadows for a stinger of what's to come. We hide out in our apartment, finally head to the Grand. We get there and get a call from Lee asking to see us at the massage place. We get there, he's watching the news, seeming happy and very surprised. As the news shows, Makoto Makamura is dead in the Sotenbori River. Lee likes that Majima had the balls to go through with his plan that he once said was stupid, but Majima didn't actually do a thing. He feels set up with this. Immediately after, we get a call from Mr. Man, who's at our club, touching our women and ordering our drinks. More than we'd like to. Get there and meet up with the man who set us all up. Homare Nishitani of the Omi Alliance, the same group as Sagawa. He's the leader of the guys who we beat up twice now, the guys who caught Makoto. But he doesn't want to harm Makoto and all. He offers just give her to him, and Sagawa won't find out that the body was a fake. Majima says that's stupid, and now, since Nishitani has called the cops, he's placed himself as not a customer anymore, so it's totally fine to beat the crap out of him. He gets arrested, and then decides to play coy for the info Majima seeks. Sagawa somehow went in, despite us not seeing him when the cops came in, just like he says, and then, well, we hear that Nishitani was a fuck-up, and it's best not to lie to his face or else Majima's life is over in an instant, and that he still never called him, which he clearly told us to do. We end up throwing him off our trail somehow, being very sorry, and then meet up with Lee. We start heading outside, and then we find the doctor saying that he needs to give Lee some painkillers, or else things will hurt like a bitch. He doesn't know where he is. We decide to help and deliver him to him. Head to the warehouse, but Lee doesn't need the pills actually. Then reveal that the Chinese doctor sold us out for some money, being a rat bastard, and then bites the dust of some Omi goons, disguised as normal random people, sent out by Sagawa to keep eyes on Majima. Now we have to sneak our way around the city, get Makoto out safely in another escort mission, and well, there's a truck outside waiting for us that Lee had perfectly parked there, apparently. When Lee goes to start it, the whole thing explodes. And then, well, Sagawa shows up, being disappointed how we lied to him. Also kinda new and just needed the proof. About to shoot Majima and Makoto, but another man gets to him first. Seems to want Makoto too, and then pistol whips Majima, knocking him right the fuck out. Bitch! We end up waking up in a warehouse of sorts. While Sagawa shows up, what happens when you fuck a stranger in the ass. Talks about a sparrow lying to his parents for some reason, but it teaches us a lesson. He lets us live because we need to find the rat bastard who took Makoto. Majima wonders why everyone wants her, but Sagawa tells him he's on a need-to-know basis with Shimano. Just get the girl, ask questions later, basically. They end up figuring out that the guy who took her is associated with Nishitani, because he didn't really want her dead. That crazy bastard's in jail, so the only people who know him is with the clan he runs. So, that's where we gotta go. With the warning of not to hide things from Sagawa, or else he'll murder me. When we get to the office, they know nothing. Even after beating them up for info, they still know nothing. All we're left is with intel on a liaison within the police who can get us into the jail and talk to Nishitani directly. So we meet a man named Billiken who takes us on a boat for a drink and talks about Nishitani for a bit. Oh yeah, and there's something about an underground arena made from World War II tunnels called the Bed of Sticks. Yeah, just completely normal. After fighting for Billiken's amusement and the most roundabout way to tell your backstory, we finally end up in a cell with Nishitani. And a bribe for good measure. Inside, we get all the info we want. But not without a salty run back, of course. You know, make things interesting. Why not? After we kick his ass again, we see that this isn't really a jail with him, but it's like a safe house for his operations. Oh yeah, and the guy in the white suit isn't affiliated with Nishitani or the Omi, with a third party named the Nikkyo Consortium, led by a man named Masaru Sera. Basically, they're somewhat affiliated with the Tojo, but they don't fly the colors. It's weird. Doesn't really get explained too well. They basically do scummy black ops and assassination type stuff, so the Tojo doesn't want anything to do with these scumbags. Sort of, kinda. I don't know. I think they like bring them in money or something. Once we get our exposition dump of the day, just walk out like nothing happens. We see Billiken injured and fall to the floor as he dies. Before we see the guard from before trying to kill us because he got sold out to someone in Tokyo who offered him more money. The guard then kills Nishitani, who takes 4 bullets, while still chases after the guard, giving Majima the time that he needs to leave and get Makoto back from Sera. Once back in town, we just happily run into Sagawa, who's absolutely livid that we left this place without a call. Common thing Majima doesn't do, and should learn by now at this point. Sending fear into Majima, Sagawa shakes us down for what we know and decides to join us to the Nikkyo Consortium base. This place is known as the Benton Inn, in a different place called the Camellia Grove, which is basically where the whores are at. We get there and split up to fight our way to where Sera is, all the way up at the top. Get to the top, tells us that Makoto's already left with some associates of his. So basically, this is all for nothing. Seeing the pattern? Sera tries to get into Majima's mind, trying to piece together this part of the story as well, as I'm doing right now. Wondering why he wants to keep Makoto alive despite orders, wants to test Majima's resolve in protecting her. So after a fight, Sera fills us in on what Makoto's worth and handed her off to a real estate agent, filling in the holes about how she owns the empty lot. It's all for a revitalization project. Majima thinks it's all horseshit, so Sera tells him that if his heart is wavering, he will not shoot. Majima holds back, but Sera gets shot anyway, this time by Sagawa. Now it's time to journey to Kamurocho, with their only lead being Kiryu's business card. Come hell or high water, Sagawa's determined to get the girl back for Shimano. And so now, our 2 stories converge as one, filling in the pieces as they cross over, leading to the rest of the narrative. But this is a review. You want to hear about the rest of the game, right? Well, considering how long it's been, I think it's about time we done that. The combat in Yakuza 0, specifically, is quite interesting. It's got a few beat-em-up elements, but with the character style switching of a game like DMC or Bayo or whatever. You know, being all flashy and shit. Both Kiryu and Majima have several different styles, each with their own moves, skill trees, special heat action moves, advantages and disadvantages. Starting out, Kiryu's set includes Brawler, which is basic standard fighting affair, punches, kicks, flips, just standard stuff, to be honest. Not really my favorite. But it does have a neat counter mechanic where you get hit and you're able to do a certain type of attack, whether light, heavy, or a grab with some sort of super armor. Then there's Rush, which is more about multiple small hits, bobbing and weaving, more like a boxing type thing. It has a free little dodge and a chance to stun, but its low damage is a bit of a risk-reward type thing from what I'm able to surmise. But if you're a fan of kickboxing, then you'll feel right at home with this. Finally, there's Beast Style. Slow but heavy-hitting AoE type style where you can hit multiple foes with big arm swings, as well as grab items in the field automatically for attacks. And a guard that sort of absorbs attacks, but it's not really even a guard, it's more just like you just stand there and take it. With the right upgrades, you'll be able to withstand hits while in heat mode, and well, it basically becomes absolutely broken. The style has some of the biggest problems though, mainly that it's hard to control, to the point of absolutely missing enemies if you like whiff an attack or you just keep continuing when no one's in front of you. Being utterly useless without heat, and absolutely needs to be upgraded or else you're not doing anything. But if you got the right stuff, you could basically melt people's health bars, take so many hits against bosses. It's so good. On Majima's end, there's Thug, which isn't too far from Kiryu's Brawler, aside from the point that it has this nice 1-2 punch combo thing, which is even better as it's upgraded. Then there's Breaker, which has Majima go full B-boy on your ass, each with their own chain of attacks and dance moves. It's not very defensive, but it's a fantastic crowd controller with the right moves, and just like Beast, with the right upgrades, it breaks the game for the better. Mainly with this third combo as he spins around, as you'll see within footage that I have of Majima. Also, a follow-up that uses heat, but it's not too useful. Though if you like style, this is, well, the style for you. Then there's Slugger, where Majima pulls out a baseball bat right out of his asshole and then swings it around like a maniac. You can swing it normally, you can do these sick nunchaku flips, like actual flipping around. It's weird, but it's actually really great. It has one massive flaw. If you hit a wall or a barrier, you can just go fuck yourself right then and there because it cancels everything out, leaving you vulnerable. It sucks when you're trying to do some real good combos against a tough group of enemies, but the style itself was just fine, honestly. Each style has a master associated with it to get 5 new moves each, as well as using Final Fantasy X Spear Grid, basically, that costs, well, actual in-game money. No microtransactions, I mean, like you literally have to use your in-game yen. It's super expensive, so it's best to grind things out to get some really good moves. Which, if you're shaking down for cash, you can go find a man walking around town known as Mr. Shakedown. He's a big hulking man hoping to become the strongest being ever. He will beat your ass if you are not prepared. This is a good place that you can test some of your really good moves, and it's arguably the best way to make money later on. And if you need a bit of extra help, you can also visit the shrine, where you use your CP, your completion points, by completing various objectives on the list. It's interesting, and it definitely does help, especially when you can put Mr. Shakedown to sleep. You can also help your business and whatnot. Not to mention that each style has its own track associated with it, that actively switches as you do. Some are better than others, but there's really not too many disappointing ones. Speaking of the music, this game has a stellar soundtrack in my opinions. It complements the combat and the story scenes beautifully. It's one of my favorites in any game, let alone just the Yakuza series in general. Using a lot of synth and mostly rock type stuff, much like the 80s itself, as well as some poppy and peppy tracks to contrast with it, also much like 80s music. Special shoutouts go to tracks like Pledge a Demon, As You Like, La-Di-Da, Troubleshooting Star, Customer Creed. Man, there's so many good tracks. Fucking A. And you can find the soundtrack free at Spotify along with the other Yakuza games. I definitely recommend giving it a listen. You won't be disappointed. What's a game with fun combat without its character, you say? Well, aside from main story progression, there's other ways that they get in character. Both around Sotenbori and Kamurocho, you'll run into many weird and wacky characters that are basically just normal people, but with crazy, outrageous, Japanese written situations. Everyone has a story to tell with their own issues. And, well, it builds the world a bit, builds character. A lot of them have to do with money or business, a common theme within the game, it seems. Like, there's a girl who sells her underwear for money, there's a guy running errands for some chick and hurts his feet, and he just keeps hurting himself. You help a restaurant out by fishing and getting a bunch of other shit. You help a kid by basically Dragon Quest. A punk who's too polite, etc. There's a lot in all these quests, and you'll find many just by walking around. And what's great is that these wacky stories don't really take away from the main plot. Especially since none of them in the game really expire. So when you just want to have fun, step away and help someone out. There's a nice chunk within the game, about 100 in total or so, various places and times a day. Which I completely forgot to mention the day-night system. They'll give you various items for your trouble upon completion, ranging from health or heat items, sellables, equipment. That does little for me, so that's why I didn't mention that as well. All kinds of things for your trouble. A lot of it really isn't worth it. Most side quests, or sub-stories as they're called, are the one linked to side modes. And, well, there's a special thing that you get for completing all the side quests, basically, but it's just a really hard set of boss fights, and they're not really worth it. So I didn't do it for this review, but I have done it! I have completed this game 100%, so... But these two side modes I mentioned before I got sidetracked are known as the Real Estate Royale and Cabaret Club Manager. They're a set of minigames. A thing that takes up a massive chunk of this game, probably about 75% of your own time, or just the game itself, is the minigames. There's so many in this game that it's insane. Well, I guess the only real place to start is, well, the two I just mentioned. Real Estate Royale, the least interesting of the two, is just managing properties. Become a manager of this firm for a client you got on your first day, back in the main story. You can invest in properties to raise. Its rank will draw in more money for the place, as well as placing security to protect from these 5 assholes named the 5 billionaires. So it's your job to completely dominate each one and basically become the kingpin of cash within Tokyo. The reason this one's so boring is because you don't directly interact with it. Every time you start collecting, it takes real time, so you just sit there and wait. Yeah, you can do stuff outside, but as for actual content, it's not really much. This all culminates to a story about corruption for money and an alternative battle style, which is actually the original battle style for Yakuza 1, so it's a nice little callback. Cabaret Club Manager is a lot more fun though. This game happens when a rival manager tells Majima to visit a cabaret club, which is basically smaller than the normal club that he runs. You basically run a place and play Diner Dash and a bit of dress up. Each hostess has their own rarity from bronze to platinum. The platinum hostesses are the only ones who can be dressed up with their own stats and outfits that affect those stats. You can only get each one from completing each area of the game, so, you got 6 in total. You need to prioritize strategy to optimize each hostess for each of the 5 areas, controlled by another set of assholes, clubs named after planets. Each have a certain demographic for each type of hostess, whether they need to be funny, cute, talkative, got old dudes, all kinds of stuff. So it adds an extra layer to it all. It's a really deeply woven freaking system that an entire video can be made on how it all works. This one also ends very similarly, and Majima gets an alternative battle style, which sort of leads to the bit of spoilers, so I won't mention. With both sets of minigames, you can buy various shops and make various friends that'll help you out at various locations. Speaking of which, there are many locations I haven't even mentioned, each that house their own minigames. There's Maharaja, the disco, where you can do the dancing minigame that has the funny Friday night dances. Two very nice looking club Sega arcades. You can play games like Outrun, Space Harrier, a Claw Machine, Fantasy Zone, Pocket Circuit Racing, where you play Hot Wheels with a bunch of kids, customize your own parts, and then you call a guy a virgin. A million different casino type places. You can do stuff like poker, blackjack, roulette. Others where you can play more Asian-based games like Chilo, Chohan, you got Mahjong, Shogi, some of the best karaoke I've played in any video game, even like karaoke games themselves. You can visit hostess clubs, talk to girls, which is scary, some weird sexy fight club where you play rock, paper, scissors, Underground Coliseum from earlier, batting cages, phone sex, darts, pool, bowling, and fishing. I told you that there was a lot. Each minigame has its own set of requirements on the completion list, which is shared between both characters with their own completion points, which give them boost if you go to this place called the Shrine. You can get stuff for your business, you can get combat rewards, items, all kinds of wonderful things. Also, not to mention that you get stuff like, well, you collect these little cars to watch weird softcore erotica, and also, from the main menu, you get these set of challenge battles. They're not exactly mini-games per se, but I'm putting it here so that way I at least get a mention. They're not the most difficult, but some of them can really get on your nerves. That should be it now, right? So how's the game end? So we're back with Kiryu. We get Makoto from Sarah, wants the same thing Cosmo wants. We then engage in perhaps the dumbest car chase I've ever been in. The worst virtual cop style gameplay I've ever seen. We find out that Oda was actually a rat bastard who used to run foreign girls like Makoto. In fact, he is the one who took care of Makoto and really is the one reason she's blind. He's now been hired to spy and kill on us from some random guy. It's Shibusawa. We find out it's Shibusawa. We escape and then hide Makoto with the homeless while trying to find Tachibana in Little Asia. He's lying down in a medical bed after being severely injured earlier in the game. Catch him up on events while we do the same. Gets taken in by a Chinese assassin, hired to take Tachibana in alive. Kiryu's severely injured, almost dead even. Recovers and sets out to find what happened. Outside of Little Asia, we get a sick bro moment with Nishiki, and we fill him and Makoto in on the situation. Turns out that Tachibana's been captured and being tortured by Kuze himself. We kick his ass for like the 50th time so far, exiting out in the empty lot where we see Tachibana's only moment with his sister being the last as he passes away. Really, really sad moment. Kinda gets to me. Kiryu then gets a call, meets up with, and then is advised by Sarah not to go after Shibusawa in the Tojo. Kiryu says, fuck that shit, I'm ending all this bullshit, and heads to the Kazuma family office after holding off some goons for Nishiki and Kashiwagi to lay low. After, thank God, the final fight with Kuze, he finally sees us as the true Yakuza, even after he beat his ass like 500 times now. You head to these docks where Shibusawa is said to be, where he ends up having Makoto. After almost dying to a shootout, Kashiwagi comes to save us, with the rest of the Kazuma family having our back, while Kiryu makes his way to Shibusawa at the top of the boat, of course. Meanwhile, on Majima's end, he makes it to Kamurocho. He's told that someone in the Champion District might know where Tachibana is. Well, it's no dice there, and then we run into Shimano's goon, who aren't happy to see us at all. But it's okay because they're new, so they're stupid. We then get invited by someone who actually knew Majima personally, and well, Shimano wants to talk. Pours us a drink, and then Sagawa drops in. Shimano then tells us that he sent Majima to do the hit because he knew it'd be a fuck-up, and told us that we were just the delivery boy. This ended up being his whole plan to stop Dojima, to buy the land from Makoto and himself to take over the clan. So, the new order is that we go find Tachibana. Well, basically, because if we could find Kiryu, we find Tachibana, and we find Makoto, bada bing, bada boom. That's how it goes. After that conversation's over, Majima's moping in the street, feeling like he was played like a damn fiddle, and gets willingly beat up by some punks, as he just doesn't really care anymore. But, since he still truly cares about Makoto, he sets out to find Nishiki. He knows that he was associated with Kiryu, who is associated with Kazuma, so he goes to that office. Can't find him, but finds Kashiwagi, who knows exactly who our boy is. Not trusting us, and rightfully so, he takes us to the room, hoping to kill us before we can hurt Nishiki or Makoto. We incapacitate Kashiwagi, and a rook tells us to head to Serena, where Nishiki is always at. Arriving at the bar, a fight breaks out, because nobody trusts a man with an eye patch dressed like a Yakuza trying to find a girl you were told to protect, but Majima decides to reaffirm that he only looks to protect Makoto and wants to help in any way that he can. We're searching around, we end up at the empty lot, because Shimano told us earlier, so he's just like, why not? Only to find Makoto overlooking the place, and with her sights slightly back too. She tells Majima that she's a strong, independent Chinese-Japanese woman who don't need no man, and, well, it sort of shows. Even after Majima decides to get her some nice takoyaki here. She ran off to Roppongi to negotiate with Dojima over the empty lot. Her bargain? She wants the 3 heads of the lieutenants and then she'll give it up. Dojima don't play that way and just shoots her right then and there, just as Majima gets there to see the horror. After taking on the current Dojima goons, Sarah gets there and takes care of Makoto from there, keeping her alive and in secret. Before Shibusawa ends up getting her, because I think the nurse is associated with it, I don't quite remember. Kiryu takes on Shibusawa with the boat as he boasts about Mike controlling everything, the Yakuza being like politics, and that there can only be one dragon inside the Dojima clan. Basically, he's being an opposing idealist compared to what Kiryu believes in. So, as the 2 dragons battle begins, on one side, Majima's going through the entire Dojima office, taking on everybody who gets in his way. Making his way up to Amano, and then the Chinese hitman from earlier. Eventually confronting Dojima with Sarah, he's able to keep Makoto safe, because, because Kiryu's things happen in the background. Everything going all according to Keikaku, which, translation, Keikaku means plan. The adventure ends with Kiryu returning and getting his famous gray suit and red shirt when Nishiki tells him that he has no fashion sense. And, he's an idiot for wanting to go back to the boss who just tried to murder him. But they walk out being the best of buds forever, where nothing bad will happen whatsoever. Meanwhile, on Majima's side, he gets his famous snakeskin coat, awakening to his madman personality, being then called the Mad Dog of Shimano. He leaves Sagawa, enjoying his freedom in the city as he goes balls out. Sagawa gets frickin' marked right off the bat, and then Majima finds Makoto being harassed on the street by his own boys. Concealing his identity, he talks to a doctor who comes to help Makoto, and then, he asks the doctor to go out with the girl, because he feels that she deserves respect. So he leaves behind the woman he fell for, the regret of what he couldn't do because of his life. And then in the post-credit scene, we see Makoto go to the empty lot to pay her respects to Tachibana, and find that buried in the ground, there's the watch that Majima seemed to fix and leave it there for her to find. But she'll never know how it got there. She'll never know that it was actually Majima the whole time. And then for the first time ever, in the timeline at least, is the very first
He said it!
thus beginning a deep friendship and rivalry as Receive You from Yakuza 1 plays for some reason, but I guess it makes sense. And And then finally, Yakuza 0 is officially over. I don't throw this word out often, but I would consider this game a masterpiece, if you will. It's definitely still my favorite Yakuza game to date. Honestly, it's a masterclass of storytelling and writing from the translation team, and that front alone. Not to mention, it's just fun within combat, and well, you got a million activities to do, so you're never really bored per se. If I were to say any issues, well, I have a couple. One, I wish the villain was written better and more fleshed out, but I found that to be sort of a problem throughout this series in certain entries. I just didn't believe freaking Dojima or Shibusawa had their full potential as the antagonist. 2, the game's look has unfortunately aged, especially when compared to the new Dragon engine implemented in some of their more recent titles. It kind of looks a bit what we call le shite. But as for a first playthrough or going through it as a longtime fan, it looks pretty damn impressive. And that happens sometimes. 3, some of the minigames can be a bit underwhelming. Mainly Kiryu's Real Estate Royale, the weird phone call sex thing or whatever. Pulling darts need to be a bit better, but they don't really get better. The catfight rock paper scissors is bad. Gambling like poker, oh man, they're not great. But I can comfortably say, aside from those ideally minuscule problems, I love this fucking game. It's such a great time to go through, and I'm glad that I have, played it, and now that I've entered the rabbit hole. If you've not played the game or series, you're honestly missing out. And, well, they're very accessible now. They're on just about they are on every modern system and PC, except for the Judgment games. Those aren't on there. And, well, the mainline series goes on sale every so often, so you can get them for fairly cheap. I got this game for, I think, $10 or something. I honest to God can't tell you how much I love this game, but I at least hope this video tried. Keyword is tried, Anyways, I'm excited to continue with this little series of videos, so you like what you saw, and you can't wait for more Yakuza stuff in the future, I guess like and subscribe, please. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate everyone watching, and I'll catch you in the next big project video. So, goodbye.